It is an interesting one. Please welcome in, of course, the one, the only, Mr. Scott Bischoff, joining the program. There, Scott, welcome to the show. We thank you for joining.
Scott,
especially
what's up, guys?
Man, we're good. We're chilling. Tigers won today, Scott. We're feeling good. We're just
good start.
Crawling to the NFL draft. I mean, can we just please hurry this thing up? That's where we're at right now.
We got 4 weeks. We got 4 weeks. I'm a mess over here, dropping shit. Yeah, it's this month is gonna fly though, because I think we're gonna start to get some information, and it's gonna be good. Because so far, to this point, we've all kind of been operating in the dark as far as what the NFL thinks about these players. It doesn't really matter what we think; it's what the NFL thinks, and that's who's going to make the pick. So, yeah, it's going to fly though. I mean, I know it feels like it's crawling, but it's going to be here before we know it, and it's going to happen. It's going to be cool.
The best storyline, Scott, and real quick, I do want to introduce Scott. He's, of course, Detroit Lions and NFL draft analyst at DetroitLionsPodcast.com. He's a staff writer at thefootballguys.com as well. He's a good friend. He joins the show often. Scott, the quarterback conversation is what we're the most intrigued in. It's what fans are most intrigued in every single year. I know Drake May and Michael Penix, J.J. McCarthy, they all had their pro days. You had Jim Harbaugh saying that J.J. McCarthy's pro day was the best he's ever seen in the history of pro days. Where are you at with just the quarterback class? Because, Scott, it sounds like now you got Michael Penix. He had a great day, ran like a 4.5 with 2 bad knees. I mean, you think you'll have 5 quarterbacks going in the first round? Where are you at with this quarterback class with like Michael Penix skyrocketing, Bo Nix maybe to the Denver Broncos, and JJ just continuing to skyrocket?
I mean, if I was betting money, I'd put money that there will be 5. I don't think Penix will get to round 1. I mean, it is stunning that he ran the 40 he ran. He's had both ACLs repaired. He's got torn labrum in his non-throwing. I think it's his non-throwing shoulder. He's got a torn sternoclavicular joint that was repaired. He's got he's got a very bad body.
Wow.
And I mean, even this vertical jump was crazy, but he likes to stay in the pocket. That's just his game. He's willing to take punishment to make throws. Obviously, he's done that. He did it for multiple years in Indiana. He did it. Obviously at Washington, he did it. He's a warrior mentality. It's just, with Penix, if you knew you could keep him clean and protected, I think you'd be pretty comfortable with him as a quarterback. It's just, it's kind of unrealistic to think that you can do that and keep him upright, where he wants to hang in the pocket and make throws down the field and challenge teams vertically. Sometimes you got to protect these guys from themselves, So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up, but I do think that you'll see Denver possibly. I don't know that it'll be at pick 12, but I could see them. They're trying to move up, but I don't know if they're going to have the ammo to do it. But I could see them, if they can't move up from 12, dropping down into, say, the early 20s range, and taking Knicks there. And to me, that makes sense. Maybe not to anybody else, but it makes sense to me, I guess.
Yeah, Scott, real quick too. Do you have a quarterback ranking for the 5? Because the one thing I'm struggling with, Scott, is who's 2. I had Jaden Daniels, and I like Drake May a lot. What's your top 5, at least for this draft, if you got one?
I always. This is going to sound nuts, but I don't necessarily do a ranking kind of a thing, because I think that's so team specific that, I just view it as like the arrogance of me trying to tell a team what my ranking is, ignoring what they do on offense, is just ridiculous. So I don't necessarily do that, but I guess
most to work out then, most to translate to the NFL, you think?
Yeah. I mean, I guess so. If you're telling me, the Bears are going to take Caleb Williams. If it were me making a pick for the Washington Commanders, I would take JJ. I would do it because I've seen him deal with adversity, and I feel like I know what his mental process is more so than the other 2. You hear the stuff about him being a winner and all these things, but it's not easy. It's not easy to play in Michigan's offense when they kind of held him back, and they asked him not to challenge, down the field much. They asked him to keep himself in the structure of their offense. They won a national championship, so it's great. But a lot of guys wouldn't have done that. They would have, I got to get mine. I want to challenge, swallowing their own ego for the better of the team. I think that speaks volumes for what he is as a kid. He's super competitive. You had adversity with Harbaugh missing the beginning of the season, and obviously all the stuff that went on towards the end. So I just feel like, adversity is going to come. Bad times are coming. They are. He's shown you what his process is to handle all that stuff. And then does he have the upside of the other two? And I believe he does. So that's where I would have him. And then I would have Daniels as my number 3 and May as my number 4. I know I'm positive I'm out of line there though. I'm not, there are things that May does that have me questioning him as a player. Some of it's stuff that I think, like he'll drift in the pocket. It's really strange. Pocket will be clean and let's say he'll drift a couple yards to his left. And now he's kind of in the middle where the left tackle and the edge player are, and he's brought himself there. So when he's got to make a throw, his hand is going to be hitting the back of the offensive tackle or in that mix. Right. And he doesn't you don't need to drift like sometimes the way he does. And then there's some mechanic stuff where he definitely he has let me find a way. I want to say this right. He's got a big arm. He has more of a power throwing arm than the ability to layer throws in. So I'm not saying he can't make all the throws, but he's got a big arm. He has a very long release, and it's a strange release. I could see him developing shoulder issues. But the main point of that is his footwork. He picks his front foot up and sets it back down to make a throw. And you can see repeatedly over and over on film that if a defense makes him reset his platform to throw, he struggles to get back into rhythm of that throw. So that's where you see a lot of throws get sailed into the sidelines. And it's nitpicking a touch, but it is different. The way he throws the ball is different than the other 3. The other 3 have no issues. They can throw from different arm angles, all that other stuff. He has a process in which he goes about throwing the ball, and it's definitely longer, takes more time, and it can be disrupted. That's why I would have him 4th of those 4.
Booner, love that one. Huh, Boone?
Talking my language over here. We have a very similar quarterback ranking or kind of list.
You're a genius, Booner.
Thank you. I don't hear that enough, I feel like, but I appreciate that, Scott. I want to get into the weeds a little bit here with this with the Detroit Lions kind of a little bit here, Scott. The question I kind of have, it's kind of a 2-part question, to be honest. Every time you come on, you give us a couple guys that are, to me, I've learned a lot of different guys in this draft from you that I haven't heard, and then they start to pop up on my radar a little bit. And when you watch them, they end up being very, very good options for the Lions. I want to ask you, since the last time we spoke with you, kind of 2 different ways here in the kind of the first 3 rounds for the Detroit Lions, and then also kind of later in the draft. Are there any guys in the last couple of weeks that have started to stand out to you that you would like maybe the Detroit Lions to pursue in the first 3 rounds, and then as well kind of later in the draft? Are there any guys that no one's really talking about that you think could be good fits?
So I did do a mock draft, and I did send it over to Jeff, and
I got you.
So there's a couple names in there, but wide receivers, Xavier Legette is a player who with my exposure to him getting more, is a player I would love for them to take. I would love for them to take at 29.
Let's go, Scott.
Love it.
Wow.
He is, so he's around 6 foot. He's 220 plus pounds. He ran a sub 440. He vertical jumped 40 inches. You can see that stuff in his game. When he jumps, it's like he floats. It's cool to see. When he is down the field and the ball's in the air, he does a great job of manipulating his body. Contested catch stuff, he's great at it. He's got really good hands, but it's that he doesn't need to win at the line of scrimmage, like other receivers do, because he's big and physical. So he can run routes in the middle of the field where Goff loves to throw the ball. And then it's the idea of, all right, here's a 220-pound dude who wants to run over you, and good luck tackling him if you're corners and safeties. and doing that, repeating that, or handing the ball off to him with jet sweeps or screen passes. It's something that they don't do a lot of. They haven't in the last 2 years with Goff as their quarterback, simply because I don't know that, a lot of what like Amon-Ra does and is effective doing is in the middle of the field, down the field. But the idea of getting the ball quickly to this player and just saying, hey, tackle me. It's something they don't have. Everybody wants to compare him to Debo, and it's fair. He's just a bigger version of it. I think he's a bigger, possibly faster version of that. But he also can do things in the middle of the field, in the intermediate game, and down the field where I think he would open up things for their offense, and not necessarily in a, hey, Jameson Williams is on the field, so teams have to commit a safety to him. It's more and even if you don't throw the ball to Jameson, he's still productive because he's opening things up. Leggett would be a player who would be productive for you, doing a lot of interesting things for your offense, moving the chains. And his story is great. That's a terrible way to say it because it's tragic, some of the stuff that's gone on. But from a Lions standpoint, this kid has dealt with significant adversity and overcome it, and has got to this point in his life. He's a very interesting person and player.
And real quick too, Scott, I'll bring this up. We did see him at the combine, and that was a guy, I think, as a group, Lukas brought him up before we went to the combine, like a month before. He stood out at the combine and looked like, I think I left, and I think I said on one of the shows, I felt like he was the best wide receiver there because he just stands out. He's big and he's fast, he's quick. I think he might have dropped a pass or two. Outside of that, in the wide receiver group he was in, it felt like he dominated, which is, to me, like, that's good to see that a guy could step on the field and just stand out like that. Especially with so many good players.
Well, Scott, too, to be honest, we didn't hear his voice, though. We saw him. We didn't.
Oh my gosh,
sounds like Kenny Chesney a little bit, but hey, he's a damn good football player. I can't even lie to
you, Scott. His voice is, there's something about it that is spectacular, and I don't know what it is. It's awesome.
Well, Scott, before
there's a few others. I think Travis Glover is a developmental tackle who I know has had like official visits with teams.
Yep.
Teams are interested in this guy. He went to what bowl game was he at? He might have been at the Hula Bowl, and then he got the call up to the Senior Bowl, and he was fine. And he's big, he's physical, he's up to the challenge. He's a fighter. He's played everywhere on that offensive line. Obviously a later developmental guy, but you need a swing tackle. They can't keep signing Dan Skipper to 1-year deals. They need something else. He's one who I think has risen in the process. And then I'm trying to think other names. AJ Barner. I don't know what you guys think of the Michigan tight end, but Barner's intriguing. He can do a lot of the inline stuff that tight ends do, while also being effective enough as a pass catcher. That's why I included him in this mock. I think he'd be a very interesting player at the point where you'd have to take him, which is like round 5. And I think he may be gone before that point.
We got your mock here, Scott. Kind of break us down what your mindset was. I saw you traded back. So what'd you do here?
Well, I traded back from 29 to 38, expecting to have to make a choice between like Darius Robinson or Leggett. And that was the target was on one of those two guys. But the point of the whole trade back is that you picked up Tennessee's 2025 first in the mix, which,
it's favorable.
To be honest with you, as a draft guy, that's like a 6 to midnight situation. That's good stuff, right? So you get a player at 38 that I would have just pulled the trigger on at 29, and doing it, you pulled. This isn't realistic, by the way, but it doesn't matter because I feel great about it. So I want to talk about it.
Absolutely.
So
love
you
all
get a
scenarios.
first-round pick next year. That means you have 2. You got lots of capital to be moving around doing things. But then it's, you went edge with Robinson. Robinson to me is Cam Jordan-like, where he's not going to line up as like a 7-tech or outside the tackle so much, but he is going to wreck shop in his gap. He's going to make it very difficult. And his measurables and skill set and all that stuff is very comparable. So moving down, Chris Abrams-Draine. I know you guys are tired of me talking about him, but I took him.
He's a good player, man.
He's a good player.
Good choice
and for value there, right?
Yeah.
They need help at receiver. Ricky Pearsall is a really, really polished player. Would be a dynamic option here. I much prefer Leggett, but Pearsall at 76 with this setup and this trade, that's all cool. Cam Hart, very big developmental corner who doesn't need to see the field much on day one or year one, but you add Cam Hart and Abrams-Draine to the cornerback room. It's a lot more competitive than it was, and you need one of those guys to emerge. So 2 is better than 1. So that's kind of the thought process behind that. Jonah Ellis is an undersized pass rusher type. At that point in the draft, you already have an edge, but more of a condensed inside edge player, a more polished Pascal. The idea there is, could there be scenarios where you go to a 5-man front and bring some pressure, and you put DJ Reader and Aleem McNeil and Pascal on the field with Hutchinson out wide and a player like Jonah Ellis or James Houston out wide, and just bring it. And yeah, I think that's intriguing. It is something they could do. And then moving past that, Barner, the tight end, clearly a number 2 in the Lions scheme with Laporta, but they're taking away some of the inline stuff that Laporta doesn't need to be doing. So, and Barner can move the chains for you. He's not Laporta, but he can move the chains and he can do some blocking. Dylan McMahon, we talked a couple of times ago about the magic number for interior guys to crack 4.47 on the short shuttle, and he did. Now, he's undersized, but still, he is a center only. He's never going to play guard, but he is a very, very athletic center, a touch on the undersized side. But we're talking really late in the draft. It's a steal. And then Glover, the tackle, who's developmental, who, I don't know that he would make your 46-man game day roster, but I know that he's going to be competitive every day at practice. He's going to work his ass off. And you just don't know what's going to happen with Decker. You don't know what's going to happen with any, you need help. They need a swing tackle, a younger swing tackle who might develop into something.
Yep. They lost Nelson too, Matt Nelson.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So, that's what it was. I think the Tennessee 25 first is interesting. Mm-hmm. Having 2 firsts is better than 1. So I love this draft. I think if this happened, we'd all be very, very, very happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are guys that, we've done, obviously every Monday we do our mock draft Monday, and these are all players. You're speaking our language, Scott. So we're even the Jonah Ellis. You guys brought up Jonah Ellis to me. We had that conversation, and ever since you joined the show and brought up Chris Abrams-Draine, we're fans.
Yeah,
we're fans. I think he's going to be the best corner out of Missouri. I'm not a huge fan of Rakestraw. That's just me personally, but I like Chris Abrams-Draine. I think he gets kind of underlooked a little bit because Rakestraw.
I agree totally. I think
first round, yeah.
Abrams-Draine is a much stickier corner where Rakestraw will come up and hit you. So there's, that's the difference is people got to see him make tackles and they fall in love with that kind of stuff. But in the end, it's Abrams-Draine who's a really sticky corner. And he did the same stuff at the Senior Bowl. So, he's a good player. I don't think he'll be there at 73, but who knows? He is 180 pounds, but I would love to add him to the Lions cornerback room. And just develop him. Yeah, it'd be great.
Yep. Lucas, you got anything before we let Scott go here? You got any questions?
Yeah, and it kind of goes right into with the mock draft. Scott, if you had to pick a couple, probably 1 or 2 players that you think are the most overvalued, you think that there might be first-round pick, but when you look back at this draft in 4 or 5 years, you're like, how in the hell were these players taken in the first round? If you had to pick a couple of those, who are they?
J.C. Latham might be one of those guys. I hope that's not blowing anybody's mind.
No,
if you guys want to fight about it, we can.
No, the only reason, because just his size, as far as being in the first round, just he's such a big presence at the tackle position, or why do you think that he's not going to be translating into the NFL?
So he does some.
I've only really heard good things about him from national wise.
Yeah, and I am, he is let me get the numbers. He is a huge human being. He's 6'6" and 342 pounds with 35 and an 1/8 inch arms. And, from a run blocking standpoint, he does all this good stuff. But when you watch him in pass protection, he's so overly aggressive and he lacks discipline and patience, where you can see repeatedly his eyes are not up at his target, and his eyes are kind of staring at the ground. And he doesn't play with good knee bend, so he wants to lean and lunge. So there's a little bit of waist bending lunging that's happening from this really huge player who ends up on his face a lot. And in round 1, that is just like, if you're drafting him in round 1, I think you're holding your breath. Another guy in that same mold is Amarius Mims. He's only started 8 games in his entire college career. Injuries have been a factor for him the entire time. So he goes to the combine and he runs the 140, and he's hurt. And he goes to the Georgia Pro Day and he can't participate because he's hurt. And it's like, he's a huge guy too. He might even be bigger. He's 6'7" 3/4 and 340 pounds with 36-inch arms.
Jesus.
But if you're constantly injured, which he is, and they're all nagging things that you can't get over, I just don't know how long-term that's a good solution. And there's some off the field stuff with him that makes you think, he's been compared to Isaiah Wilson, the Georgia tackle from 2 years ago who went to Tennessee, who's already out of the league. So there's some of that stuff where, it wouldn't surprise me because I think those guys are pretty overrated. I'm also hoping that those guys get drafted in front of the Lions at 29 because somebody will fall that shouldn't.
Right.
Those two guys, I think, I'm trying to think other players.
What do you think about Nate Wiggins? I know Lucas.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
He ain't a big Nate Wiggins guy. He ain't a big because of the weight.
He's super fast, but he's built like a spindle. It reminds me of Emmanuel Forbes, the player the Commanders took last year in round 1. He was 166 pounds, I think. Yep. He had a lot more production than Wiggins does, though. But, that's tough. I don't know how well he's going to hold up at 170 pounds, 172 pounds, whatever he is, against bigger receivers in man situations. I think that you want to play him in zone looks, but still he's a small player. And, you guys know, man, that it's physical, it's violent, things happen. Obviously he's a freak athlete. He's a great athlete. He's a really good coverage corner. It's just, can the body hold up? I don't know. That's,
real quick,
because I don't know,
another corner. I just want to see where your thoughts are on this guy. Another corner and he keeps getting mocked to the Lions on a lot of different mock drafts is Kool-Aid McKinstry. And we had the conversation on our show yesterday where we kind of felt like Kool-Aid, like if that would be a good pick for the Detroit Lions. What are your thoughts on him? Is he someone that would be able to like step in right away and play on the Lions? Or is that more so, hey, come in, learn a little bit behind like a Carlton Davis and some of these vets? And then like, where would you, if the Lions drafted him at 29, would you be happy with that?
Yeah, it'd be okay. I mean, he fits. I mean, it's tough in the college game. It's tough to find, physical man coverage corners. Alabama does it. So, I mean, if you want to find that type of player, it's Alabama. I would want him to be a little more physical though than he has been. So you'd have to dial up some of that competitiveness and get him, trade up and get Verse. That'd be great. You'd want to get Kool-Aid more competitive. I think that so we just need to understand that, he's playing on the broken foot, or he's working out on the broken foot. And I don't think it's relevant so much for the 40 time, because I think he ran like a 4.52. That's generally what his speed is going to be. I don't think that the Jones fracture is necessarily going to inhibit the speed, because you're not really changing direction. I think if you were, then it would be a problem. But I think he is a 4-5 corner who plays the exact system that you want, and just there's a little bit of lack of competitiveness where he'll allow a receiver to get into his route when his job is not necessarily to allow that to happen. So you can see that happen a little bit, but we have to understand too that they're going to go to a place where they're going to get coached up. They're going to be asked to maybe do some things differently. And it doesn't mean that, Kool-Aid can't get any better from where he is right now. I would think that if you asked a year ago, are you cool with Kool-Aid at pick 29? We all would have said, yeah, for sure. So, I think it'd be fine. It's definitely one way. It's one way about going about, filling some holes on their roster.
Yeah, and he's injured, so it has to be something. It's got.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have foot surgery. He's going to return. Who knows when? Yeah. But there isn't a premium upon him coming out, in August and having to be the guy, because you have guys who can help mitigate however long it takes for him to get there. But I could see him being in 2 years being cornerback 2 and being a relatively productive one, and a good member of their defense. I could see that happening.
Yeah, no question. Good stuff, Scott. We appreciate you as always taking the time to get by. Scott,
thanks for having me on, guys. I enjoy it all the time.
Oh, we're going to have you on as long as you're okay with it more often here as the draft approaches, because I can't wait for it.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds good. I like it.
Let's do it. All right. You can find Scott at Scott, Detroit Lions NFL draft analyst at DetroitLionsPodcast.com, and a staff writer at FootballGuys.com. You can check out him and Russ's show, which you guys are obviously doing a great job there. Over on what network is that on again?
DetroitLionsPodcast.com.
That's what it is. All right. Appreciate you, Scott. We'll talk to you very soon, my man. Thank you.
See you guys.
Appreciate it, Scott.
Scott.